Hi, my name is Andrew Duncan, and I didn't get to present in class. I'm recording right now, and my presentation is on Canada. The reason I chose Canada is because it's north of us, and I really don't know that much about it, or didn't. And what I found about it was really interesting, actually. But as it says, my name is Andrew Duncan, and a little about me: I am originally from Kirtland, New Mexico. And I recently just moved to Phoenix, Arizona, because my job transferred me here. I work for FedEx right now, and I really like the environment at FedEx right now. It's a really fast-paced environment, and I really love that. I'm looking to get my degree in business management and hoping to go into my MBA. But now I'm going to start with the presentation. Uh, These are Canada territories. Actually, the ones down here are called provinces. They're called provinces because they pretty much have their own. I guess best way to explain it is kind of like United States, how that they each have their own state government, and we have a federal government. Each territory, each province has its own government itself. But for these territories up here, Yukon Northwest territories, uh, they do not. They are ran by the federal government, and they do not have their own state government because there's not many people that actually live up there, and that's why they don't have their own state government. And as you can see, the current population of Canada is almost 37 million as of October 3rd, 2017. The medium age of Canada is 40.7. I thought this was interesting that Canada is roughly the size of United States, but has 1/10 of the people, and that's because the climate is so cold northern. That's why a lot of these territories up here don't have many people living in them because it's just too cold. And it says right here, it's northern half is too cold for much of the year that the ground remains permanently frozen. As a result, 90% of the people live within 100 miles of the U.S. border, which is really interesting, which I never knew. And yeah, you can kind of see it. All the major cities that you can see right here are pretty much right on the border of U.S. Now I'm going to go into the history of Canada, and I'm going to pull up a quick YouTube video.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Canada. Today, a bustling nation. Long ago, nothing but natural resources waiting to be turned into cars, TV sets, and atomic bombs. The naive natives have no idea how valuable the land is. They simply live on it. But Europeans changed that. The Vikings set up Cain, but soon leave at the request of the Beothuk people. It's a last request. Then comes Giovanni Cabot, known as John Cabot because it's easier to pronounce. Cabot claims Canada for England and reports there are inexhaustible amounts of cod. Modern technology proves him wrong. Jacques Cartier then claims Canada for France. He persuades natives to return with him to be exposed to European ideas and diseases. Then comes Henry Hudson. He claims Canada for England again. Trying to reach the Orient, Hudson goes north, then west, south, west, northwest, until his crew's had enough. Others follow. Samuel de Champlain believes that the route to China is up the St. Lawrence River. He rapidly learns otherwise. British and French ships continue probing for a route around Canada until someone discovers that the Little Beaver makes a great hat. Many great hats. Canada's no longer an obstacle, it's something to fight over.
And that just gave you a little bit of the history of pretty much France and Britain
Native Canadians are
fighting
believed
over.
to have migrated from Asian lands about 11,000 years
But yeah, Britain and France pretty much fighting over Canada for years, going back and forth until pretty much the 7 year war between Spain, Britain, and France is when Britain got the pretty much the land of Canada and other lands too. But um, this is when Canada has an interesting history because on July 1st, 1987, that's when they celebrate kind of their Independence Day, which isn't they aren't really independent, to be honest. I'll go over it more with their government, but I mean they slowly started getting their independence more and more throughout the years after that. Like World War I, they actually fought for the first time as an independent nation. Um, their full government independence would be achieved later in the Canada Act of 1982, which the British Parliament transferred the power to change Canada's constitution, pretty much. Um, yeah, I'll go over that more when I go over the government. All right, for the culture of Canada, as you can see right here, it is mostly English and French, as they both pretty much fought over the land. So there's still a lot of French people and English people that live up there. Other is just like kind of like America is just like a variety of people, Chinese, Spanish, just all sorts of people. Now I'm gonna go into their religion is up there. Most of their religion is as you can see, Roman Catholic, 39%. Then we go into 20% Protestant, like Baptist and stuff like that. And as you can see, a big chunk here is a lot of them don't have religion, which I thought was pretty interesting. Actually, kind of follows the suit for kind of like America too. And then you can see all the other ones here: Muslim, Hindu, Orthodox, Buddhist, all that right here. And now we'll move on to Canadians. Canadians have the reputation of being nice people. Like they always have that joke of like when you bump into a Canadian, they're gonna be the ones that say, "Oh, I'm sorry." So in that aspect, Canadians have got a reputation of being very nice people. Um, as far as I could see, like when I looked into it, Canadians are very similar to Americans, besides the I guess polite part for some regions. But they are very. I mean, like I said earlier, they live only 100. Like major cities are within 100 miles of the U.S. border. So they are a very adapted to American culture. Now moving on to business etiquette in Canada. Things to do in Canada when you are doing business with people in Canada. In business meetings, a handshake is appropriate, and it depends on the region too. Like in Quebec, where it's mostly French people, you might do a kiss on the cheek instead of a handshake, stuff like that. So it all depends what area you're doing your business in. Pleasantries are exchanged very quickly usually. As I said, it might be different in Quebec. The French people might spend a little more time to actually get to know you more. Um, the usual distance between two people should be 2 feet for Canadians. They like their space, but it could be different in Quebec yet again. French Canadians, however, tend to be stand slightly closer. They'll be more in your bubble. Business lunches are usually very short with lighter types of food and no alcohol. It's usually pretty quick, like sandwiches and stuff like that. Um, but after the business, if you are invited out for drinks by a Canadian counterpart, it is pretty wise to attend unless you really aren't able to. because they'll see it as being rude if you don't want to go out with them and get to know them on a more of a personal level. Now, things not to do in Canada, it is considered rude to speak in a foreign language in the presence of other people who do not understand it. I think that can be said for a lot of cultures. It's kind of rude to speak in a different language right in front of people you're trying to do business with. It's very unpolite. Try to avoid topics on conflicts between French and English Canadians. Quebec actually wants to be its own independent country, which I thought was interesting. They don't want to be part of Canada, actually, so you kind of want to stay away from those topics between French and English Canadians because there is kind of tension there. Do not compare Canada to the U.S. They don't like that either. They don't like you mistaking them for an American either, or comparing. So don't do that. You can point using your index finger, but be careful not to point at other people, as it is considered very rude to do that. Avoid using the peace sign. It represents a serious offense. I thought that was pretty interesting. For us, the two fingers up means peace, but for them, it's pretty much like saying the F word or us giving the middle finger to someone. Note that a great importance is given to respecting everyone's opinion. Regardless of rank, status, people expect the right to be heard and listened to. The only thing that's different in that pretty much goes over all Canada except Quebec. They like the monarchy of like the boss is he'll run the meeting and pretty much he's this head honcho there. So it's kind of different for Quebec. Like in Quebec, like if someone's talking, they might interrupt you. Even if you're talking, they might interrupt you right in the middle of your speech or something like that and get a point across. While in other Canadian provinces, they'll let you finish talking before they'll give their opinion. That's the difference between the Quebec and pretty much all the rest of Canada. Now I'm just going to go over the government really quick. It was kind of confusing. The Queen still is considered the Queen over there. They have a coin on her and money, but they're considered their own independent nation. The Queen states the head of the government, the Prime Minister, but they vote for their own individual provinces for the governments. Business, government, not hard to start a business in Canada, to be honest. It's similar to the taxes and registrations like in the United States for states. Each province you have to register and you'll get taxed for it. Now I'm just going to move on to business. The currency, compared to the US dollar, Canadian dollar is higher in value, as you can see right there. The loonie and toonie are fun to say. That's $1 and $2. Business exports. Canada is the 12th largest exporter in the world. Canada is the 5th largest exporter of oil, which I thought was interesting. Third biggest oil reserve, which I didn't know. Most of the exports go to the United States, as you can see, almost 80%. That's kind of misleading right there, since the oil went down in 2014 and 15, so that's going to get higher and higher, the oil. Moving on to imports. The imports, it kind of goes the other way. We import into Canada a lot of consumer goods like food, clothing, pharmaceutical, and stuff like that. As you can see, 16 and 7%. That's the highest consumer goods like food and clothing. Now moving on to the references, and I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.